last time I popped on here, but I told y'all I was working on a project and I said, listen, let me show y'all what I've been working on. I'm so excited. Okay. So what I'm calling this is like a show and tell, so to speak. I want y'all to see what I was working on. Y'all look at this. I thought y'all would be able to see it better from here. But yeah, I told y'all I was working on an exam prep, and yeah, so like I think in mind maps, so I'm just gonna show y'all what I've been working on. If y'all decide that y'all want to do a deeper dive with me, let me know. I'll break them all down. I pretty much have like 12 sketchbook sheets or whatever. I was one of them kids when I was younger. The instructors would always say, "Oh, she's doodling. Stop doing that." And they grab your paper and rip it up. And I was like, "No, I'm studying. I'm taking notes. I promise." Yeah, this is what that looks like. I'm so happy that technology moves with us where I'm able to capture it like this. I did this by hand, but it didn't look quite as nice as this looks. So for me, I'm one of the people where I need it like this. So just so y'all can see, this is what it looked like. I'm gonna go slow so y'all can see. So this is page 11. I'm gonna actually just talk y'all through a couple of pieces, but I'm really just doing a show and tell today. Let me just for like conversational giggles, I'm gonna have my little version here. I'm trying to have a bigger version for y'all so y'all can see everything that I got going on. But there are so many pieces to this exam that I have to do. So as I told you guys before, I was studying in Pakistan law. This is micro credential at the university for which I've been taking classes. And you have to know where I'll show y'all. So you have to know the Constitution, right? And like you had to read through all different articles. So I had to take notes on which parts I felt like might pop up on this exam. And mind, this is very specific work too, like at that, right? So this is what's there. I'm sorry, out of nowhere it's like got super hot. So, because I'm studying, I got into my little hyper focus mode. So here we are. So this is that part right here. And then you have like specific like constitutional cases that I would need to know like the references. So that's here. You have your civil stuff, and then you're gonna have like your criminal stuff as well, which is gonna be like over here. Let me look at where I have it. The whole point of why I have this structured like this is I'm a very visual person. So I'm trying to force my brain to do what it normally does. Like, instead of trying to like fight the system, I'm not somebody who can just look at a whole bunch of paragraphs and be like, oh, this is great. It's not great. My brain is going to say, no, we need a map. So I took it and I tried to make it something where I can memorize it. Because that's how I am. My brain like snapshots information. So instead of me trying to memorize like 13, 14 pages of like text, that's not going to work for me. I had to do it like this. Yeah, I had to do it like this. So this allowed me to look at the specific areas where I knew they were going to be doing assessments. So you got Pakistan Penal Code. You got the specific relief acts. You have the criminal procedure. You have the civil procedure. You're going to have a specific order that went out. That's like 1918. You have the Constitution, and you have all of these pieces that makes it super easy to kind of like follow along. So I'm gonna once again scroll this real slow so y'all can see. And just when you feel like there are people who don't get you, I promise there are people who get you who probably mind map like this too. But it made it so much easier for me when I did it this way. Because child, looking at all those paragraphs and my notes and my doodling, as they called it, right? But like, this is how I take notes. I can show y'all some of my old notes from school way back 10 years ago. It looked a lot like this, just not exactly. This looked pretty, like the one I have. But this is how I actually think. I also made an exam panic sheet. Like, you know, I used to have the panic rooms in movies and stuff. Like, I made myself like a panic sheet. Because at the end of the day, these are the main areas. So outside of having like this visual beauty that I like, which is more so what I'm gonna force my brain to kind of memorize. Mind you, I feel like I really had it. The parts I'm concerned about is the specific language, like the specific sections. That's the part I need to like force my brain to remember. But it's this. your constitutional cases, right? You're going to have your key legal doctrines that you have to know, the fundamental rights, key articles. That's the part, like right here when I was telling you, it was like a whole bunch of articles, like your key articles. That's what it is. I need to lean forward with y'all. Okay, I got you. Bet. So your key articles, you have like your amendments, it's important acts and laws, civil procedure. You should have criminal procedure popping up as well. Penal code. Very important dates, right? Oh, the criminal procedures at the bottom and the law of evidence. So once again, I had this 8th grade teacher named Miss Secord, and she always told us, like, if you want to memorize things, like if you're studying, to put it on one sheet so that you can memorize it. So that's pretty much, I've always kept that as like a best practice in the back of my mind, that when I am studying, that I need to try to put everything on like a sheet so that I can memorize it. So now I'm gonna go show y'all the other 10 pages, which is pretty much a breakdown of this main 2. Because these are the 2 I wanted to have memorized, right? So, child, let's get into it. I'm going to work y'all back from the originals now. Y'all ready? Let me pull my little sheet so I'm not trying to constantly go back and forth. If y'all decide that y'all really like this, let me know, so I can like break it down like more seriously with y'all. But yeah, this is page 1 where we talk like the Constitution. So you have the supreme law of the land, defines the structure of the state. I'll put this where y'all can see it. Protects the fundamental rights, sets limits on power, guides all laws and institutions. So basically everything in Pakistan law connects back to the Constitution. And that's like this portion. So I have like the key pieces I need to have memorized. Luckily, this is supposed to be a multiple choice exam, but still you kind of have to really have certain core things in your mind. So y'all kind of see why I've been connecting a lot of stuff to Pakistan law throughout the last like month or so, couple months, I guess you could say. So you have this here. I have a general like roadmap. So you got the Constitution, the fundamental rights and articles. You got government and institutions, the amendments, and constitutional evolution, which is actually pretty interesting. And then the specific relief act. Then you have the civil and like criminal procedure, like in codes or what have you. That portion I luckily felt like, because it's common law, and like here in the United States we also have a common law structure, found that to be a little bit more comfortable as far as me trying to memorize what that process is and be able to do the comparators. So that was fortunate, I feel like, at least as far as my learning experience was going. Let me move this. Okay. And the law of evidence. Once again, I feel like something that's pretty similar and comfortable information as far as trying to memorize the process. Sometimes you just have to adjust for the language, but like for the most part it's common law, so it was very like pretty straightforward, which was pretty cool. And you have your legal framework that goes like right here. Oh, let me make sure you can see. So you can see the legal framework. So that was fun. And like, where are we going? So you can see like the evolution right there. If y'all got comments and all that, I will definitely respond. Hello, how are you? I see you in the chat. So tools of the Constitution, I have that here, right? So you have the articles, the fundamental rights. Let me do it like this. The articles. Y'all see it? I want to make it where y'all can see it, but I also don't want to like not. Right. That's your quick memory hook. The Constitution is the map. The institutions are the like the engine. The laws are the road. Justice is the destination, right? And the one thing, like when you look at the branches of power, which I found like interesting and cool, right? Let me put that in the middle. Make sure it's on the screen. You kind of see, if you come from like a U.S. centric, if you point at legislature, executive, judiciary, like that framework of looking at it like that isn't like very foreign, but the application would look somewhat different in some ways, right? So that, like, I just always love looking at some of the differences and like the similarities, because I found that to be like super cool. But then of course I have to understand exactly where it's at. So of course I have like Article 50 being like the parliament, national, like provincial, like assemblies, and you have like your executive, which flows back and forth between the executive and who implements the law. So you have like your president, head of state, prime minister, head of the government, federal and provincial cabinets, which flows to judiciary. Let me move that closer, which who interprets the law, right? Supreme Court, High Court, subordinate courts. So that doesn't probably sound too foreign when you hear it like that or see it kind of like that, which once again I said I needed those, like I needed the visual, right, to see it, because when I saw it that way I'm like, okay, that makes it easier for me to understand. So makes laws, interpret laws, you know, interprets laws, right? So I love looking at it like that, but once again I had to look for the articles and stuff and be able to remember what goes with what, which once again gets very interesting. And then we had like the core principles, so I had to put that there, right? Because you think of like what's at the very top, you have to be like cognizant of like what's there. So core principles being our sovereignty belongs to Allah, exercised through the people, federalism, power share between federation and provinces, the rule of law, no one is above the law, fundamental rights, inherent, inalienable, and you know, like justice, right? So that piece should feel very similar if someone's coming from a US-centric mindset. Democracy, government of the people, by the people, for the people, should sound very similar, like, well, familiar, right? So like I'm always doing like comparators in my brain so I can anchor things, because that's how I anchor. Everyone's gonna have their own, you know, like anchors, but for me it was really important that I kind of put like memory hooks, anchors all throughout the process so that I can know it. Like I don't want to just memorize things for the sake of memorizing it, because yuck. I like to memorize with a mindset that there will be future applications. So it's important for me to study it the way I want to have it memorized later, because I know me, the way I study it and memorize it the first time is how my brain is always going to anchor it. It's a beauty to that, but there's also like a slight vexation that comes with that, because when I get new information, it's really hard for me to rework the way my brain process that information. So I try to be really broad, and I try to make sure that it is as robust and open as I can possibly make it. You know what I mean? So that's why when I'm learning it, I try to learn it like how you guys see me having all this stuff formatted right now, because I just know my brain. I know me. I know me. So like I added the comparative law element to it when I was studying. I put the visual with it while I was studying, because I know me. I know me, right? And I think that's also important when you know yourself, to like plan accordingly. So this is just how that first page of the sketchbook went. As you can see, when I first was sketching up, I was gonna be 7 pages. Child, it turned out to be 12. And knowing me, probably add another one. I'm trying to stop myself, because this can be a thing, right? So this is technically page 1. And then you move over to page 2. Like I said, I'm just kind of walking through. I'm not gonna like go through every single piece, but like the constitutional cases, I thought that was kind of interesting too. I'm gonna see if I can move y'all through some of my anchors. Okay, this is page 2. I'm gonna give y'all a quick little scan, and we just look at those main constitutional cases that like I need to know. So it's important I know like why those cases matter. Like they protect rights, they limit powers, they define justice, they shape, you know, the Constitution. Move it like that. I put R, but really it's just the Constitution, because this is like their Constitution, not mine. But as I study, I like to keep all my notes a certain kind of way. So, where we want to go to the first one. Challenges basic democracy systems, right? So the one I feel like is super interesting, let me get it angled on here, right? Significance is to recognize like the laws inconsistent with fundamental rights can be like stricken down, which I thought was really interesting. This was 1958. So it's not like it was that long ago, right? Which is really interesting. A lot of this is actually just not that long ago when you think about it. But very interesting case, right? Then you move over to the second one that I had, which is 1972. And this challenges to preventative detention under the Maintenance of Public Order Ordinance. So it basically strengthens protections against arbitrary detention. Personal liberty is a fundamental right. Make sure y'all can see that. Personal liability, or liberty rather, is a fundamental right. So detention laws must be just, fair, and reasonable. So that was significant to me. I thought that was really interesting. And obviously, the ones I'm highlighting are not just significant to me, but these are ones I need to know relevant to the exam. Let's put this on the screen where you can see. This one was about executive action, right after like an imposition of martial law. Might be interesting information to keep in mind, right? Just always interested in what other places did at other times, right? But martial law does not give unlimited power, so fundamental rights cannot be completely like ousted, which is very good information just to have on hand and just to know, relevant to Pakistan law, right? But significantly drew the line between state necessity and individual rights, which is something, once again, I just found very interesting. So I wanted to kind of put it in a way that's easy for me to just see and visualize and memorize. And that was in 1977. And then we kind of moved over to like 1993, where they dissolved like National Assembly and dismissed the Prime Minister. So the president's power to dismiss assembly is subject to constitutional limitation and judicial review. And the significance of this was it just reaffirmed the parliamentary democracy and rule of land, or rule of law. So that was pretty interesting. We have the next year, 1994. This was with regards to property rights, but the challenge to confiscate property of like a charitable trust. So property rights are protected under the Constitution. And deprivation must follow due process, right? So protected charitable institutions strengthen property rights, right? It's nice to know people can't just run up and just take your stuff, right? That's always nice to know. And then you have the other one from 99, which was an extra constitutional actions are voided. Constitution supremacy prevails, so reassert that powers come from the people, not from just the force. Oh, I'm sorry, y'all can't see that one. So this one. So then it's like a quick recall that I made right here, which is very visual. And I just love, like, once again, making things very visual. So like liberty over executive convenience. Martial law is not necessarily congruent to absolute power. President's powers are reviewable, right? So like, you know, we can look at what you're doing and say, hey, what's going on there? Property rights need due process, and Constitution is bigger than extra constitutional power, right? Significant information to know, and you see how I make that very visual, so it's easier for me to have this memory of it. And then there's like this case timeline at a glance. So I made that, and it was fun. My memory hook for this particular page was cases are like stories. And for me, I'm one of people, you know, I joke about having the receipts getting into the tea, right? So, like, the cases are the stories. So you do want to actually read the cases, but like having like knowledge, okay, this ruling had a story that was behind. There's a reason this rule is in place. This case is being referenced, right? Principles are like the lessons that we learn from these situations, and justice is hopefully the goal. So kind of like seeing how those align has been really fun for me. I'm gonna place this one here, and we're gonna move to the next one. Y'all can't tell me I'll be getting to these receipts. Don't tell me I'll be getting it to them. Okay, so this is the third one. I'm gonna move a little bit quicker through them, so I don't got y'all out here all day. I'm like, girl, but I told y'all I like to share. Can't help it. I had so much fun. My mom was like, what is going on? I sent her this like, hey, you want to help me study? She was like, girl. She probably in the chest now. She's like, you need to teach this to somebody. She's like, you did all this work. I was like, listen, this is just for me to study. I was just gonna have it sitting around just for me. And she's like, you better show this to somebody. So listen, here we are, y'all. Here we are. So page 3. This is fundamental rights and articles, right? So this is equality before law. So that would be article 8 through 14. Then you have basically this is the heart of the Constitution, right? So then you have freedoms, which is articles 15 through 22A. Am I showing y'all the race that? Yeah. So let's go from this way. How about that? So you have equality before law. So that's articles 8 through 14. Then you have freedoms, which was 15 through 22A. You have human dignity, which kind of falls between 23 and 24. Then you have religious freedoms, which is 25 through 28. And then you have like the highest fundamental rights, right? These rights cannot be suspended except in like emergencies, which is under Article 9. So the right to life and dignity, freedom of religion, right to fair trial, right to property, right? No specific ones are outlined right here. And the most tested articles, because I based off of the quiz they was given, because baby, it looked like equality before law, which is Article 8, security of the person, which is Article 9, safeguards as to arrest and detention, which is Article 10. We kind of talked about the particular case, right? So we kind of already see that one going in. Freedom of speech and freedom of religion. So protections at a glance. You see that here. I kind of do a lot of repetition. Habeas corpus. We can see that right here. Right, and kind of break down like some of the terms and like what they mean. So pretty much just to make it quick and easy. Produce the body. We command, to forbid, by what authority, right? To be certified. That would be this whole section right here. Hopefully y'all can see all that. There you go. And then I have like a memory hook. Where is it? So a memory hook is right here where it says rights are not gifts from the state. They are guarantees from the Constitution. They're not gifts, they're guarantees, right? So a lot of times I like joke around while people talking. They're like, oh, that's my right, that's my right. And then I listen to them say that they had to ask for permission. I'm like, well, if you had to ask for permission, then technically it's not a right, it's a privilege. Rights are not gifts from the state. They are guarantees from the Constitution. We're going to have a whole nother conversation about that because I have a lot of feelings. There are some things that probably people had to fight for certain rights. And from the U.S. perspective, but we talking about Pakistan right now. We talking about them right now. I'm not saying that they didn't have rights they had to fight for because from what we've been seeing, there has been some situations, right? But it is very interesting, right? No pun intended with the term right. Okay, so where rights exist, justice breathes. That is this like fundamental rights and article section that I put together. And why they matter, right? Because they protect dignity and freedom. They limit state powers. They guarantee equality and they build like a just society, right? It should be fair, right? So that was fun doing that. So now we move over to page 4. We move over to page 4. I'm going to show y'all. I'm going to have to speed it up. So some of this should start to look a little bit like somewhat familiar. So we have legislative, executive, and judiciary. So I told y'all that might look a little bit more familiar at glance. But there are going to be some applications that feel very different if you're coming from a U.S.-centric mindset. Mind you, from my perspective, I'm doing like direct comparisons in my study habits to how the U.S. does things just because that's been my comparator. I know I do a lot of comparative law stuff. So that's been my comparator because that's where I had the most familiarity. So I was doing like a direct comparison. I'm going to show y'all that. So we have like a parliament set up here. That would be Article 50. But you have the National Assembly. Then you have like a Senate, right? So if you kind of just look at that structure, it kind of reminds you somewhat of like what in America or like the American or US centric, it kind of looked more like your Congress and like Senate setup, right? So it has some similarities but also some differences, right? Powers, they make laws, approve budget and finances, check and balance the executive, can remove government through no competence, which is an article that they have there, right? So that would be that. Then you move over to the executive, and you see that there are like 3 spots that kind of go up there, right? Yeah. So you had elected by electoral college, head of state. That's like the president, 41. That's Article 41. You have the prime minister, head of the government, right? Leader of the majority in the National Assembly. The real executive power lies here. So that's the prime minister. And then you have your federal cabinet. Minister head the major ministry. So like when they say like ministries, think like departments if you're doing like a US comparison, right? Kind of put that kind of there. And that would all be the key articles: 41, 91, 92, 95. You have your judiciary, interprets law and ensures justice, right? So Supreme Court, Article 184, 189, guardian of what? The Constitution. Final Court of Appeals, right? You have a higher court, the highest court in providences, subordinate courts, right? You have your checks and balances. I want to put that at the bottom, right? You see how they kind of just constantly checking each other. Boop, 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 boop. And that's how the flow looks. Important institutions that support good governance. Where do I have that relevant to this? So here, trying to make sure y'all can see as I'm talking. Right, you have election commission, federal, court, council of Islamic ideology, auditor general, public service commission. So parliament makes the rules, executives run the game, and judiciary is like the referee. The Constitution is the field. That's kind of like the mental anchor I gave myself for this. So yeah, that one's that one. I'm going to slide through some of these pretty quickly. I told y'all I wouldn't keep y'all too long. But this is like a specific, my apologies, wrong order. You had the constitutional evolution, which I thought was super fun. Let me put this up. So you have the constitutional evolution. Y'all might take more interest in this, but this is like overall timeline, right? Page 5. And I'm gonna like slide through the rest of these. I think make sure the foundational stuff was there. So you have timeline at a glance. You have the 8th Amendment, the 13th Amendment, 18th Amendment, the 21st, the 25th, and the 26th. And we go from 1995, so democracy restoration, the local government push, the de-evolution, or the devolution, revolution, the good governance and accountability, the judicial reform, and the modern reform for the future, right? So that takes us from 1985 to 2024, so pretty recent, right? This one, the key part was returns power to the people. That was the 8th. The 13th was power to the people at the local level. The 18th was provinces got their power back, right? The 21st, which was 2015, was clean governance, strong accountability. 25 was an independent judiciary is a strong shield. And 26 was preparing today for tomorrow. So you just kind of have like these little visuals that I wanted to have right there, right? Amendment timeline. Oh, let me go here. Amendment timeline. Right now, like what changed, like power, the thing, I think this one was the one I'm like really trying to get myself to like kind of have memorized visually. right? But I give myself lots of visual markers because for me, I'm just a visual person and I need that. From centralization to devolution. So that is that. Specific Relief Act. I'll go like this so y'all can see again. Specific relief, it means, of course, ensure a right in a particular way other than by like awarding damages. So this is interesting. It's like the main remedies under the act, like that's what these are. So you got specific performance, injunctions, declaratory decree, recovery of possession, cancellation of like an instrument, rectification of instruments, rescission of contracts. Those are like all the methods or remedies rather under the act. It's basically the purpose is to prevent like breach of rights, to ensure for like undo the consequences of like the wrong that pretty much happened. So this one has been interesting too. So once again, a lot of those like movements towards like equality, kind of like how I've been interpreting it. And you got the one for the, I'm gonna switch to the penal code one. So this is this code of civil procedure. I'm just gonna slide through, right? So I told y'all I'll be trying not to keep y'all too long. Institution of suit, issue and service of summons, written statement and rejoinder, reframing of issue, evidence, argument, judgment, decree, and execution. That would be all of this right here, right? And important features is applied to like all the civil courts. So promote spare and speedy disposition or disposal, emphasizes written pleadings, which is interesting, right? I got some little hooks I added on here just for my own little knowledge. I like to have acronyms, I like to have analogies, all that good stuff. Then we're going to do the penal code just real quick because I'm about to pop y'all off. I told y'all I'd be trying to keep y'all too long. I just want y'all to see. So I'm going to just skim through because if I leave it too long, y'all know I get to talking. So just a little show and tell. What I found interesting was the category of offenses too. They said they're not playing about you getting people relationships. They said, look, offenses against the state, against public tranquility, you messing up, you disturbing the peace. Made me think about that Ludacris album, Disturbing the Peace. They said, listen, they said you trying to, offenses against public tranquility, against human bodies. Now that was interesting. Okay, let me tell you one of the charges. Let me go down here. This one right here was very peculiar because for one, you have to have intent around the charge because these are very much with like intent. But I found this one very interesting, right? Because you know the quote is like deletion, right? The part that was interesting, it was 3 pieces to it. It was to completely like decapitate, to cut, like trauma alert, right? Trauma blockers, to completely remove a body part, right? I was like, oh, not complete removal. Removing a body part, one. The second one was to puncture it, like to damage it, like really, really bad, but don't remove it. I was like, oh. And then the third one, trauma blockers, with is related to like femicide, right? So it was a crime against women. So specifically, if you did something to harm the baby while it's in someone's like body, right? They had a whole separate piece for that. So that's very, very interesting. So that was just one, like, as soon as I see that, I'd be like, okay, that's in my head. That's this one right here. So there was 3. So even though this particular section was like 302, like 302 is like 3 parts that go underneath that one. But the interesting ingredient, it must be approved beyond a reasonable doubt, right? Because it's criminal law. Now keep in mind with the civil, it's like you just kind of got to believe that they more than likely did it. Now with the criminal one, they like without beyond a reasonable doubt. Okay. Now also in that same conversation about somebody they don't be playing about people being in relationships, listen to that. Look, cheating 402. I'm sorry, 420. They said they're not playing, y'all, but they say don't be playing with relationships over here. So interesting, right? It's so interesting. Ignorance of law is never a plea, and I find stuff like this so incredibly interesting, right? So we'll digress to the next one because this puts us at our last little flip set, right? So we go here to the Indian Evidence Act, right? And I appreciate some of y'all for sticking with me. Ooh, that's the wrong one. Because yes, this is how my brain thinks. I couldn't look at it as a whole bunch of paragraphs. It was too like blah, right? Too blah. Move this up. Maybe y'all want a little bit more right there. Okay. So I'm gonna give y'all a quick little skim and then I'm gonna talk about it. So you got the chapters at a glance that I had to like be familiarized with, but introductory, relevance of facts, admission of evidence, burden of proof and judgment, witnesses, documentary evidence, inspection of evidence or otherwise. You know how they say evidence otherwise proven? You know, like if it's a way that somebody can prove something without having, it's like something like, okay, so for instance, when I think of that, I think of like, let's do a pop culture event. Like Herb Gotti, R.I.P., said that he dated like Ashanti and he found out that, you know, she ended up dating Nelly and he saw it on the TV because it was in the middle of somebody's game and they were sitting in the front row. Like, that's not something that he would have to otherwise state or prove because it's kind of like public information that could be out there and exposed. Not nothing extra he had to do because it was on TV, it was on regular TV, you know, it was an actual basketball game. You know, it's something that could be verified through other sources and other ways and other means, right? So that's very different than somebody being like, yeah, I got pictures or I got text messages in my old phone that I don't use no more. That was my personal property. You know what I'm saying? Like something's like otherwise like available. So like the key ID there was seeing and like other forms of like proof. So that was the one I found, like I always find that one interesting. And I always just love Estapo whenever I see that word because it's like stand on it. When somebody take a position, they be like, oh yeah, I wasn't there. Okay, if you telling me you wasn't there, just know for the rest of your life, when you tell this story, you better not have been there, right? You better not have been there because you said you wasn't there. So that's like a stop when I think that. Then you have exceptions, like certain situations where like rules or evidence are like relaxed. You know, like something like hearsay. Because don't nobody want to hear what somebody else said. Like, come tell me, I want the original source to come tell me what they said, right? I'm not trying to hear all that. So which brings me to this little triangle I got here that goes like your direct evidence was like the person, the witness themselves talking. Then you have like something recorded, like, you know, your logs, your records, a recording of something, right? Something direct. And then you have facts that point, right? That point to a conclusion. Then you have the expert opinion. So somebody who's like supposed to subject matter expert, somebody who's just supposed to know in that industry or that world, right, comes in and makes a certain statement based off their background. And then, of course, after that, you'd be like, hearsay, secondhand information. So to some people, that process may already be somewhat familiar, right? Remember I said somebody's going to be quite familiar if you're coming from a U.S. centric. I know that 80% of the people who follow my content are actually not U.S. based, but this is a point of reference. When I'm doing comparators, a lot of times that's my first comparator point before I branch out to other comparators. So I always like to give that little caveat. So interesting, right? You see that relevance of facts, which was number 2, right after the introduction. Relevance. You always watch the court. You go like, relevance. They scream out relevance, right? We're familiar with that. So let me see. What was the other one I wanted to mention? Another one that I was thinking, but I probably already addressed this somewhere else. I ain't gonna worry too much about it because I said I wasn't gonna keep you long. But yeah, so as you can see, like, this is how my brain works. Not the most neurotypical process there, but yeah. Oh, did I show y'all? Oh, that's why, because I didn't show y'all page 9. I went to 10 without showing y'all 9. You're like, girl. Okay. So, pretend y'all seen this one right before the last one. So, this is the law of evidence. That's what my brain was telling me to go here. I was thinking, I was going to tell y'all about privileged communication, but it wasn't even on the list because I showed it to you too early, right? Show and tell, show and tell. So basically the big idea I had here was like not everything is evidence, not everything is relevant, only what helps find the truth comes in. You know what I'm saying? So sometimes if somebody like me, I'm like, let's look at everything. I was like, no, let's limit the scope. So remember the term limit the scope. So I'm gonna bring that back up and then I'm gonna let y'all go, right? So this is kind of the conversation on law of evidence in Pakistan. This is 1984. For me, a personal anchor is my brother was born in 1984, RIP. So for me, that's how I kind of make myself remember this particular year, and it gives me a good anchor. You might have another anchor. Like, there's a really well-known book about like society that was also called 1984. Like, whatever helps give you an anchor when you're trying to memorize stuff, right? But this talks about the type of evidence, and it goes from section 3 to 60. So this whole little section will cover, or this little boxes will cover like 60 sections, right? So oral evidence, documentary evidence, presumptions. So your oral evidence, what is said in court, documentary evidence, what is written or recorded. Presumption is courts that may fill in the blanks or the gaps. Remember how we talked about in a previous live, when it comes to common law, like say for instance from the perspective like a contract or something, right? If you don't have it written out, you're subject to the standards of that industry. So if it's like standard in that industry for something to occur, and y'all don't have nothing in y'all documents or writing saying what's supposed to happen, you gonna fall in line with whatever's standard in that industry. You could follow more about that one if you want to see what I talked about relevant to like entertainment when we're doing like the course on this channel. But like kind of keeping that in mind. That when I say presumptions, that's what they're talking about. So who must prove what and to what standard? Generally on the person who asserts. So what the standard? If you don't have it written out, what are the standards of that industry? That's the interesting part about common law, right? Burden of proof. Who proves what and to what standard? And it depends on like what type of case too. Because if it's like civil law, then it's for the plaintiff it has the burden of proof. If it's a criminal case, then the prosecution will have it. And if it's like an affirmative, then the defendant has it, right? So that's that relevance of facts, right? You ever watch court TV and they be like, relevance, you know what I mean? You be like, whoa. But they basically saying, like, whatever you're talking about, is it relevant to this case? Right? Because sometimes some people be trying to lead and guide stuff in the other direction so they can insert certain things to make it a part. So a lot of times I'll be laughing because they be like, relevance. Like, is that directly connected to this case? It must be directly connected to what, actually, more so, let me correct myself. It must be directly connected to the issue. So that's one. And then my thing about privileged communications, that's what I wanted to share something about, right? Bloop, bloop. When I think of privileged communications, I always kind of laugh because I think for so many years I worked in mental health, right? And they're like, oh, you know, let's say you've been subpoenaed or your record's been, I immediately be like, privilege. That's the first thing they teach you, privilege. And then, you know, you can't just be like, oh, I'm not going to court, I'm not going to respond. That's not good. Don't do that. But I'm not giving out legal advice based off your training, but how I was trained, they'd always say, hey, you know, you need to claim privilege. And then once that would happen, I would ask them to what? I would ask them to limit the scope. Why? Because I was working with them as a mental health professional at that time. So our discussions were confidential, right? And that was privileged. So I need to claim privilege. And then I need to try to limit the scope to as limited as I possibly could, right? To protect the person I was working with in the agency and how our whole structure was set up, right? Because you're supposed to be protecting, that's their personal private information. And we didn't want it to be open in court and then make certain things like that later admissible, right? For other things or otherwise available, or however people want. What's that phrase? I think the phrase is otherwise admissible because now it's been referenced somewhere and it's accessible, right? So like all these little pieces that went with it. So when I think of that, that's how I anchor it because of my previous background. Everybody got their own anchors based off of their own background, right? We know what hearsay is, right? Secondary information. But when you say relevant to types of evidence, it's secondary information that wasn't said specifically in a court, right? You wouldn't be like, oh, the person says, like, it's because the information wasn't said in court. Yeah. So that is that. Child. All these notes coming out this good old brain of mine. Y'all wonder why y'all ain't seen me. I was working on this before, but I had to like really get into it because I need to like be seriously nailing some of this stuff down. And I said, okay, let me go ahead and share with y'all. I had a couple of things I was going to share with y'all, but child is hot. I don't know, something about that. I don't like being hot and sweating, you know, make it a little irritable. But yeah, I'm so happy I got to share this with you guys because all of that leads into this mega map I wanted to show y'all. My studying process. So today was just my little show and tell. I wasn't trying to do no whole little lecture or nothing like that. I'm literally just showing y'all like how my brain works because I found that some of y'all really